I realized that I was so good at assimilating to new environments, like picking up on what people either wanted to hear or like what they are more naturally attuned to want to behave like. And I would like kind of change myself, change my behavior in a way to behave like them. So like very much like a chameleon just to fit in.
This episode really made me think, Kiko, because even with a good amount of common threads between people, especially when you're young, you think you have it all figured out. And those relationships, still, there's no guarantee that they'll work either. But you have a better chance if you have more common interests and common threads, because life throws you a lot of curveballs at all times. So you really have to have a person that you can trust and love and really go through life like it's almost sometimes can even be like a war. And you need somebody that's going to be there, that's always going to have your back. And the truth of the matter is that kindness and loyalty, these are old time values that don't go away. This is part of human nature that we all have to have. Without that, relationships are not really real, and they're eventually going to fail if that isn't built from the beginning and where it continues and where you both can grow together. And if that's not going to happen, guess what? There's why a lot of relationships today fail, because they don't have that.
I am so excited to have Kiko Zang here today. I heard her on the Strictly from Nowhere podcast. I don't normally reach out to guests that I listen to on other podcasts, but her story about growing up and being anti-authoritarian, I was like, let me talk to her. And she was also on the Whatever podcast, which is a total diversion from being on a creative entrepreneurship podcast. So those two things had me reach out. Kiko, welcome. And I'm excited to hear about like coming back to the US and how it's different now.
Thank you. Reena, it's great to have you. And I didn't know you don't normally reach out, so I'm so honored that you reached out to me. I think I had a great time talking to you last week for the pre-show discussion, and there were a few things that I didn't know if I was ready to share. And that was the feedback from Justin from the other podcast where you heard me on that I wasn't sharing enough about myself. But after our call last week, I think I'm ready.
Cool.
So
Let's do
you'll be
it.
hearing some juicy stuff.
Yes. I mean, everybody loves to get juicy. You were even saying for the Whatever podcast, he gives you a feeler beforehand and like wants to know before he has you on his podcast, like, what is the juice?
Yeah, it's like even when he agrees with you, he will respond in a way that sounds very contentious so that you feel rage baited and you react. So that's a completely different way of behaving that we don't have to copy.
Yeah, no, I don't do that.
Was yeah, but he was definitely, it was an interesting experience. So we can start wherever you want. I know that one of the things that we talked about was like the boarding school experience, right? And then there's like stuff. So yeah, you pick your topic.
I haven't talked to too many people that got sent away at 12 and went to a boarding school while their parents were in another country. So I would love to know kind of what you remember from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit of premise for like everyone that's listening. I'm Chinese. I was born in China, but when I was 12 years old, my parents sent me to New Zealand. And it started with a parent-teacher conference about 2 years prior to sending me abroad. So I was in, I think, sixth grade at the time, and we were preparing for a parent-teacher conference at school. I was in a very, very good school, very well-known school in Shenzhen, which is right across the river from Hong Kong. So new district, supposedly with the new district, you have like innovative ways of teaching, but then it was a day before parent-teacher conference, and my math teacher was pretty much orchestrating the class for the next day. So he was like, this is what I'm going to teach. And here are the places where student one, student two, student three, you should come in. Student one, you should answer wrong. So student two can answer correctly, this type of stuff. And then I raised my hand and he was like, okay, Kiko, I have my Chinese name, but like, just say Kiko for sure. So he was like, Kiko, which one do you want to answer, right? Do you want to do this one where you answer wrong or like this one where you answer right? And I was like, I don't want to do it either. I just don't think not a very good way to portray how we teach, how you teach and how we learn to our parents. Like, this is kind of fake. They want to see how we actually behave in real classrooms, not like this rehearsed version. Like, I don't really like this. And then he was very upset. He's like, how dare you talk back to teachers? He actually wrote a letter to my dad and was like, Kiko disrespects teachers. You need to kind of educate her and make sure she doesn't do this again. And my dad wrote back to him and was like, I heard what happened. I don't think what you were doing deserves any respect. And that made him
Way to go, daddy.
yeah, and that made the teacher more angry. So I was starting to get like, I was failing the math class, even though I was good at it. So he would just like pick random stuff and like give me a low score. And it really hurt my confidence. And then my parents ended up having to go to this teacher's house and like bring him presents and like bribe his way back into like treating me normally. But that was the moment where my parents are like, well, she might just continue doing this, right? She will either continue to like speak up for things that she didn't agree with, or she's gonna like hit enough roadblocks that she's gonna have to suppress her nature to continue learning in this environment. And they didn't want either to happen to me, so they started to look for places for me to go abroad because they felt like in a more Western society, I would at least have a dialogue with a teacher, or they may never do this.
I feel like these things happen in America too. I've certainly seen that in private school.
Probably, right? Everyone is trying to put their best foot forward, and America as a culture, we're famous for saying like faking it till you make it, right? Fake it till you make it. So I think this is everywhere, but there is different levels of acceptance to that. And I think in China, this is incredibly hierarchical, that you don't get to call anyone out. You don't get to choose a different way of behaving because that's the only way. And I think my parents were just looking for more options for me, like ways for me to choose. But then we weren't a really wealthy family, so we couldn't immigrate as a family. That would be very expensive. So they were looking for countries where I could go alone, like to a boarding school, or like if we didn't have any family member abroad either. We ended up choosing New Zealand. Well, they chose New Zealand because it was affordable and I could go without a guardian. So they sent me to boarding school. And my mom found the school on like Chinese Google on Baidu. And I think she searched for like small town, New Zealand, all girls school or something like that. And like it popped up and then she emailed them.
Oh my God. And then what do you remember from moving there?
I was quite little, right? So I think
Like 11, right?
I was 12. I was 12. Yeah, I was scared but excited because it was obvious. Like before that, they did prime me, right? They sent me to a summer camp for 2 weeks in Australia. And then another winter camp in like the UK for like 2 weeks or something. And then I came back and I had fun. So they're like, okay, she's ready. She's
Just
ready
like
to
summer
like leave
camp.
forever. Yeah. Yeah. So then my mom came with me for our first flight. And my mom's goal was to help me make friends because like we didn't know anyone. So we got to this town and she just looked for any existence of Asian people. And she was like, that's where where someone will understand her. It was really hard to find. I think there were like 5 Asian humans in the entire town. The town had 50,000 people. It's called Timaru. It's 2 hours south of Christchurch on the South Island of New Zealand. And there was one fish and chip store that was owned by Chinese people, and there's one Chinese restaurant, 1 or 2 that was owned by but multiple generations of like living in New Zealand. So she found one that she could speak Mandarin with and just asked this person to look after me, even though like we've never met each other. It
Oh my God. How did you feel about that?
was the only person she could find.
Did people think you guys were like related?
No, but it was also very strange because we had nothing in common, right? She just happened to be a Chinese person who like had a store, and my mom was like blindly trust, like there was no background check. She didn't know who this is. It's just like they could speak, right? They could dialogue, and that was enough for her. I think it's not like I share that much with this person. And she would come around, I think maybe once every month, like to the boarding house I was living at and bring me some food. But yeah, yeah. But like it's not like I spoke to her about things that were happening, right? We had nothing in common. We came from very different backgrounds. The only thing that were similar was that we spoke the same language. Yeah, so and then I didn't really call, like there's a phone in the boarding house. There were about 20 of us that lived in this boarding house, which my mom didn't know, neither did I. We just thought this is like a fixture for schools, right? There's a boarding house, there's a boarding school, but actually it's people that get kicked out of other schools and they get sent to the boarding house. A lot of them were kicked out of their local school that were like an hour drive away, and then their families will send them to this school because I had a boarding house. And that was, my mom couldn't have anticipated that, right? So they're not gonna put that in the brochure.
So you must have made some interesting friends.
I think it was good that I had any friends at all, yeah, but they were for sure interesting. It was, yeah, it was.
Was there any like shenanigans of them trying to get kicked out of there?
Some of them would actually get kicked out and then go somewhere else and get sent back because there's not that many boarding schools. There's a lot of farmland in South Island of New Zealand. So there's usually like a few schools within like a few hour stretch of road. So they might go try something else and like it wouldn't work out there and they would come back here. There was a lot of like pressure to conform, I think. Everyone had girlfriends, they were trying to explore themselves. And I think I got my belly button pierced just to to be like, hey, I'm one of you. There is a lot of wanting to get with boys as a way to conform and like to behave in a certain way. But when I first got there, there was like for anyone that's coming in new, there was quite a hazing ritual. If you want to hear about that, everyone's is different, right? So I will first talk about what happened to someone else. I guess I'll talk about first what happened to me and then how that impacted and changed my behavior. So I could speak some English, right? I wasn't someone who like spoke zero English, but there was no other Chinese person or Asian person when I first started at the boarding house. And I think it was just hard to make any friend at all. And on the flip side, I had never lived in an environment with like other like foreigners, right? Like I had never been in close contact with like so many people that were white, right? Looked different from me. I never met someone who had red hair. So there was this one girl who had red hair, and I just kept staring at her because I'd never seen someone with red hair before. So anyways, these strange behaviors that I exhibited probably also didn't help with the situation. So I did end up making one friend, and the two of us had a fish bowl. We each had a goldfish, like in this bowl. I wasn't super good at taking care of my fish, so then my fish died. And then I put my fish in a cup and kind of just like left it there, thinking about what to do with it. I was like, maybe I'll flush him down the toilet, right? Maybe I'll do something with it. So I left it there and I was thinking about it and I went to take a shower. It's like a communal shower. And when I was in the shower, someone, I don't know who, took the goldfish and poured it down my shower, my dead goldfish. And I don't even know what motivated this person. Till this day, I don't know who did it. But I remember just kind of, I was naked, right? This fish pours down and I had to fish this fish away from the drain so it doesn't die, and then like wanted to give him a proper funeral. So I put the fish back out, finished my shower, and I didn't know what to do with myself. So I went over to my house mom's house because she doesn't live on premise. She lives like outside of the school. I went to her house and I just like cried. And I was very sad, but I couldn't articulate what about this experience made me so sad. Was I humiliated? Was I sad about the fish? Was I sad I didn't really know. I just felt very sad about it. And then she was angry for me, right? And then she asked like, who did this? No one owed up to it. Till this day, we don't know. But I think what I took away from that was I was attacked because I was different and or I was weak, in some way. So my response was to become the bully, to like be strong or pretend to be strong in some way. So I'm no longer the victim.
Wow, that's an interesting reaction.
Yeah, there's no allies, right? Like the only way to,
It almost sounds like prison.
maybe I've never been to prison, but
I haven't either, but I've interviewed people who have, and it's almost like, yeah, like if you show weakness, they come for you. So you have to be tough.
yeah, I kind of needed to be like, I kind of needed to establish some kind of presence in order to no longer get bullied and no longer get hazed. And I think I did like the belly button piercing, the hang out with boys is kind of like, hey, I'm cool. Don't hurt me. Like, because I can, being near me could make me cool in some way. That was like somewhat successful because I still looked very different. So another thing was joining the bullies. We had other new girls that would come to the boarding house, and there was a lot of like soaking tampons in water, hanging it around their room when they're sleeping, putting water in the condom, putting it alongside her when she's flipping, when she's sleeping sideways. So when she flips over, all of them pops and like this type of stuff. There was a lot of that.
Did people get offended by it, or did they think it was funny?
The people who did it thought it was funny.
Yeah, of course.
The girl, her name is Alicia, actually, I remember. She was a little bit bigger, and I think she was already not super secure in herself. And I was just like one of the few people that decided to do this. I think for me, I was so eager to join them. I was so eager to be one of them that anything that wasn't like incredibly offensive, I was like down to do. So I was one of the people who like filled those water balloons and lined it along her when she was turning over. She was upset. She was upset. It was like this really vicious cycle of like she was upset, she was sad, and then she would do something mean to someone else. It just, yeah, it was teenage girls, like lots of hormones, hard to control. Yeah.
What was your relationship with your parents during that time? And do you feel like you were, I don't know, able to communicate with them?
They don't really know about this. I'm actually, like I said before, I tend to normalize things in my head. And I've gotten this feedback about like normalizing things that's happened to me or not talking about it at all. So this is my first time sharing it in this way in public.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
No, no worries. So my parents don't know. So they don't know the day to day. I tell them mostly good things, like the phone in the boarding house, everyone gets like 30 to 45 minutes. So you can't, because there's so many of us and there's only phone hours at certain times of the day. So I wasn't allowed to continue talking to them or like call them whenever. So when I did call, it was more reporting like good news, or sometimes I would be sad, but it was hard for me to paint the whole picture for them either. Like it was hard for me to be like, I had a goldfish and then the goldfish passed away and then I was doing this and then I was in the shower. Like I think I didn't even want to relive it. So they didn't know, but and I think to a large degree, it was a very formative experience in my life, right? Very few people had the experience of living on their own in a country that speaks a different language from their native language and figuring out how to survive since they're 12. And there's also a lot of people that are much less lucky than I am, right? There's people that have been put on the street. So my approach to my parents was kind of normalizing these things that happened to me and telling them things that would make them happy. So they felt like, because they were missing their child, right? Like this experience was happening to all of us, right? They were not able to spend weekends with their daughter. They were not able to share a lot of life experiences with their daughter. So I didn't want to add to that. So I mostly said good news to them.
Wow. So you never told them you wanted to leave?
I may have, but not the details of why. But for my parents, it was like all of their money, right? When they decided to send me there. Like if I change something, I would be wasting like the very little money that we had.
And you felt the weight of that a little bit.
Yeah, it's an opportunity that very few people had the chance to receive. And who am I to say that I want to throw it away? Like they worked very hard to get this money to send me abroad so I can have a different life from the life that they had. And I don't think I felt like I was in the position to repay them by leaving or yeah.
I feel like that's such an adult thing for you to say.
It might be just like traditional Chinese values in a way, right? Like the collectivist culture, like we're doing this for they're doing it for us. Well, they're doing it for me, regardless of like how things were happening. Their intentions were always the best intentions. So it was up to me to make the most of it. Yeah. So that's kind of how I felt.
Wow. But that was a long time. How long were you there total?
I was there for 6 years, 12 to 17. Before I turned 18, I left.
Wow. Did most people make it that long?
Most of them don't start that young. Most of them either their entire family move, right? So like so there's good and bad. So the kids who immigrated with their entire family, they get to come home to a supportive environment, but they would assimilate less, right? Because like they still have this like Chinese culture, this home that provided like a harbor, but also like a sense of identity and support for them. So they felt less Western, I guess. They felt less like Kiwis, less like New Zealanders. For me, I didn't have that. So it made me feel alone, but it also allowed me to assimilate very, very quickly because I had no option, right? I could only join them. I didn't have like a home to go back to and speak Chinese and like eat Chinese food. I didn't have my parents to tell me like this is their fault or like this is not right or like don't let this like create more doubt in your head. So like my only like influence was like from the outside world, not from people who will love me no matter what. So I had to figure out how to be more like them or how to change my behavior to fit in or to like feel less hurt. But also I learned my English became really good very quickly.
I was going to say, like, how has that shaped your identity now?
Yeah, so I was in New Zealand till I was 17, and then I went to the US, right? I went to the US with a New Zealand accent, not this one, but like a very flat Kiwi accent. And I wasn't Chinese enough to sit with the Chinese international students. I wasn't Chinese American, so I didn't have that. Like everyone's like, I hate going to Chinese school on Sunday. I'm like, what's that? Or they'll be like, oh, this is what my parents are doing back at home. And like, I didn't have that either. And then I would speak to, there's no one else from New Zealand. So I'll talk to people who,
You're like, who am I?
yeah, and I'm like, blah, 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 I'm Kiko. And they're like, where's your accent from? Are you British? I'm like, no, I'm from New Zealand. And there are very few things they can say after learning I'm from New Zealand because they don't know. They will be like, I love Lord of the Rings. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I've never seen it. Or, so they're like, the conversation will like die there. So it was like a new type of like culture shock. And I remember like trying to talk to the Chinese kids and like realizing we didn't have much in common either. Like I had a lot of missing culture context for like 6, 7 years. And then having to change my accent very rapidly because I was sick of explaining my entire life to people. So like within 6 months, I like lost my entire New Zealand accent because I was like, oh, like that's one last question they will ask me.
No way. So you like worked on that?
Yeah, it's kind of like an intuitive thing. Like I just wanted to not be asked questions all the time. So I started to sound a lot more like a valley girl, like just have normal conversations. Because I mean, I was in LA, right? That's just what people sounded like.
It's funny, but I do think you sound LA now.
Yeah, now you're hearing it. When I first met my husband from Ohio, and he was telling me that I sounded so much like a Valley girl when we first met.
You're like, I worked on that. Yeah.
Then I realized that it's a skill, right? I realized that I was so good at assimilating to new environments, like picking up on what people either wanted to hear or like what they are more naturally attuned to want to behave like. And I would like change my behavior in a way to behave like them. So like very much like a chameleon, just to survive, just to fit in. But then I also kept looking for places to contain all of me. So I ended up joining this club in college called the Hapa Club. So Hapa means half in Hawaiian, and it's a club for mixed people. So there's a lot of white Japanese mix or white Chinese mix, Caucasian Chinese mix, or all that in Hawaii. So like that's where the word came about. It's like half, and I'm not mixed. Like I'm full Chinese. My dad is half Chinese Muslim, and my mom is half Chinese Manchurian. But I'm full Chinese. But I had this like mixed cultural identity. So I started joining this club because that was the only club that would like embrace all of you. Like you didn't have to pick. You didn't have to be like, I'm Chinese, I'm American, I'm Irish, I am African American. Like you didn't have to pick your identity. You were welcomed and accepted for all of it. And that's probably where I felt the most at home in college. And actually, did you watch Community? You know the TV show? It was about community college. It was on NBC, I think. It had Donald Glover, Childish Gambino. Yeah, so it was like one of his breakout roles. And then there was like Allison Brie, these actors. It was a show on NBC for like many seasons, and there was this one Indian character. His name is Abed, and he's played by a actor. His name is Danny Pudi. But what people don't know is he looks Indian and he plays an Indian role, but he's actually Indian and Polish. So he's a hapa. He's 50-50 mix. And people didn't know this about him, and then all of the roles that he got would like get him to play an Indian character. There's actually another very interesting short on YouTube by Vin Diesel, who's half-half. Yeah, so Vin Diesel is half-half, and he made this short called Multifacial. I know the name sounds like really weird today, like when you think facial, but he made Multifacial, and it's his short film about the fact that because he didn't look quite black or quite white, he was having a hard time being an actor because they couldn't like cast him in certain roles. And he talked about it. This was like a 30-year ago. He made this short film 30 years ago, but you can find it on YouTube. But so Danny Pudi had a similar experience, but he didn't really have like a platform to talk about it. But I met him, like I randomly saw him in a coffee shop in Pasadena when I was a junior in college. And he was just like reading, and I went up to him and I was like, can I get your autograph, right? So he like gave me my autograph, and then I left, and then I went back and I was like, I'm the president of a club called Hapa at USC. Can you come? I know you are Polish and Indian, like most people don't know that, but can you come and talk about it with me, with my club? And then he was like, okay. He was like, write your email. He asked me to write my email on this notebook that he was journaling on. And I was like, okay. He's like, I'll talk to my manager about it. I was like, okay. And I was like really excited, but then I was like, it will amount to nothing, right? Because he's a famous person and he had a hit show on NBC and all that. Or was it ABC? I don't remember. But then like a week later, his manager emailed me. And then his agent, his manager, him and me, I had my first conference call of my entire life. And then we talked about how to bring him on campus and what he would talk about. And then we did a whole event where he came on campus, like lots of people were, like I became famous because I was next to him. And he read this essay his essay is called My Name is Raj. And it talked about how he would audition for like 50 roles, and all of those roles he would be called Raj. And he's like, I actually speak Polish, but like no one ever asked me to speak Polish.
He has an audition for that role.
Yeah, they just keep casting me as an Indian person with an Indian accent, even though he grew up in the US and like didn't have an accent. And I think it's more normalized now. Like you hear about reports of the Asian gathering, like the white Asian mixed gathering in San Francisco today. But over 10 years ago, when I was in school in LA, and even before that, throughout my life, it was just like a very like alienating experience, maybe, to be like not a part of the culture or to have embodied certain nuances in your upbringing and culture. It's not visible.
But I love that you found a club and that you were so proactive, and like, look, from you doing that, you created something so cool.
Yeah, I thank you. I don't want people to feel alone. I don't like that. So it's important for me to like be a part of something that made others feel like they belong. That's why I'm building my startup. That's why I've done all of these jobs.
I was going to say, I feel like that goes right along with kind of what you're trying to do with your startup. Let's talk, because that's like the perfect transition. Let's talk about Chomp and how you like to know what other people are thinking.
Yeah, so Chomp is a social game for reading the room. You know the term reading the room, where you go into a room, you're like, I know what they're thinking, or like I know how they're different or similar to me. There are some people that really pride themselves at being good at reading the room, right? And there are the majority of other people who may not be good at it, but they want to. They want to find out what people are really thinking. So stories, gossip, understanding of humans is how we construct culture, is how we shape our behavior, our understanding. So it's the everyone is always wondering what other people are really thinking. Are they like me? Are they different from me? Am I special? But there's another thing that's universal, which is what grounded my reason for doing this. I think the other thing that's universal is feeling misunderstood. So feeling misunderstood, being misunderstood, I believe is the most universal experience of them all. I could feel misunderstood because of me being Asian in a predominantly white society. A Black person could feel misunderstood because they are in a, I don't know, like a really red state or whatever. Everyone can feel misunderstood for a part of their identity, for a part of their being. And it's actually the most universal experience of them all. But we don't like to talk about that, and therefore we don't know that other people are feeling misunderstood and feeling different, because those parts, the parts that are perceived maybe weaker, we don't say out loud. And today's social media has made us, we all talk about authenticity. I think that's something we talked about in our last conversation.
It's like such an overused buzzword.
Yeah, because like everyone is now so good at pretending to be authentic. So like even that is performative. So everything on social media today is performative. It makes us feel like there is the right way to be authentic and there's the right way to behave. But how about the thoughts that we don't think is right, or we think if we said it, people will misunderstand something about us?
I'm constantly worried about that. I'm like, I hope I said that right. Like, I hope I didn't offend you.
Yeah, like cancel culture, right? Like people are so easily canceled for like whatever reason. And we hide.
I asked a question. I can give you an example. Recently in my Facebook group, I was like, if you're saved, is that like you're forever saved? Is that like you're saved for life? I was wondering that, like genuinely curious about that. But somebody told me that they were like saved at like 9. I'm like, is that your free pass until you're like the rest of your life? Or how does that work? But I was like, I hope I didn't say that in the wrong way.
Saved in what way? By God or
Yeah.
by... Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've been to like my fair share of like camps. Like I've had friends, like actually in New Zealand, I've had friends that are really Christian and they will be like, I really want to help you. If I don't help you, if I don't get you to convert, you're gonna go to hell. I don't want you
Right,
to.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like, who are you to think you can help me? Like that was my reaction at the time.
And also, do your parents have the same religion?
No, I would say my parents are, well, my dad's side is they're Muslim, so practicing Islam. My great grandparents still prayed 5 times a day and like practiced Ramadan, like he till his death. He was very devout. My grandma and my dad less so, but they still eat halal or try to eat halal. And I always wanted to like really study the Quran and understand it, but I've not had a chance. Yeah.
So they didn't make you.
No, and I wouldn't say that's really my dad's religion. It's like by birth. When you're like born into being Jewish, but you don't practice the religion, it's more like that. And my mom is more like, I would say like atheist agnostic. But actually, when I went to New Zealand, one of the first things that she tried to do is try to get me to join a church because she felt like that's where I can find support and like
Community.
love and community.
Yeah, friends.
Yeah, I was very against it. I didn't end up doing it. Like I understood where she came from, where she was coming from, but I didn't want to do it because I didn't think I had to really feel it to join something like that, right? It's a personal thing, it's a part of my identity. I didn't want to join just to make friends. So I didn't. But we've digressed. Where was I before? I forget. We were talking about
Finding your people.
finding my people. Oh, why I'm building Chomp.
Yes.
Yeah, and
And wanting to know what people think, really.
yeah.
And how can we really measure that? I loved when I heard you on Strictly from Nowhere talking about the question, is it a red flag or a green flag if somebody tells you that they love you right away? And then from listening to you on that episode, I then asked that question in my Facebook group. And I felt like since I have about 800 people in this little Facebook group of mine, people that have kind of stayed with me over the last like 6-year journey of this podcast, that when I asked them that, they knew it was a private Facebook group and that I wasn't going to broadcast it to the world. I feel like a lot of people are like, green flag. But my initial reaction to that was kind of like the red flag. Don't be like a dork or like show your love immediately. But if it was the right person, then I was like, oh, wow, I felt influenced by all of their answers, like saying, oh, that's not weird.
Yeah, I think our private beliefs can be quite contradicting to like conventional wisdom, right? And a lot of us are very different behind closed doors. Like who we are in public and who we are in private could be very different. Societal pressure or your expectation of yourself, like a lot of that can influence how you react. But then you wonder why people are more and more lonely and they can't meet anyone, right? Like if you meet each other based on false pretenses, you just don't connect, right? Like what you put on your Hinge profile, the photos that you so carefully curated, the answers that you so carefully talked about, is that really you? And if it's not you, how can you expect someone who loves you for that version of yourself to love all of you? That's just one of my rants about society.
And I think too, because I met my husband online, like
Yeah, me too. I met him on Tinder, my husband.
I love it. I met mine on JDate. And I think, I mean, obviously there's so much that goes into it, but it's funny, like he was wearing a fedora in the picture and I thought it was a cowboy hat. And since I'm like a Jew from Kentucky, I was like, oh, another Jew from the South. Cool. And he was like, actually, it's not a cowboy hat, but he ended up being from the South. It's just, so that was a funny misunderstanding. And then I put BUR for Burbank and he thought it was BUR for Burlingame. Like he thought I was in the Bay Area and I was like in Southern California. So he ended up driving down to meet me or whatever. But yeah, profiles are such a small piece of what we choose to share. And it takes so many years for you to really communicate who you are.
Yeah, and it sounds like if I heard that story right, it sounds like just like you guys are looking to establish more common ground between you, right, in that dialogue, right? J-Day is already one common ground, right? You're both Jewish. And then you were looking to see if he's from the same place as you. And he's looking to see if he knows where you're from, right? Like you're trying to establish those common realities, common ground. Usually that makes connection a bit easier. But then there's like in my opinion, a deterioration of common ground or shared reality in today's internet. My feed will look very different from your feed, but my feed will also look very different from my husband's feed or someone of my age because the algorithm is trying to niche us down, right? It's trying to get us into scrolling and never stop scrolling because of the things that we either really, really like, so enforce our beliefs, or we really hate, which is another way to enforce our belief. Like, how can someone, if I'm a feminist, I would get a lot of, that's how I got pushed the whatever podcast clip, right? Because it was so obviously anti-feminist, it made me angry, and I watched the whole thing and I responded to it. So all of the feed is trying to enforce our existing belief, and our beliefs will start to become like islands. Who we are, what we hold true as our identity are more and more enforced, and it becomes harder to establish common ground over time.
It's funny. I was thinking too that I like a lot of friends of mine, their content just to support them. So that populates my feed, even though sometimes I want to go look for other things that aren't populating my feed.
That's also, yeah, that's another thing is what if you want to know, like, I don't know this to be true, but like sometimes people's friends, they all end up having similar beliefs, right? They think similar to each other. That's why they're friends. But what if you want to see like a opposing opinion?
Then you got to go look for it because, yeah, you might not be liking that enough.
You can't find it. And like that was one of the things that we were really intentional about for Chomp, right? We always try to give you green flag, red flag, agree, disagree. These are 2 to 4 very opposing high tension options for you to see, so that when we see the results, the revelation isn't just about how people are similar to you, but also like who are the people that are different. And like you might have thought everyone is a polar opposite or everyone thought like you, but is that reality? So Chomp is trying to surface that not just are we similar, like our place in the world amongst others, but also this gap between perception and reality. We may believe this to be true, or we may believe others like this or dislike this, but is that what they're really thinking? Because you don't get to see what they think privately on social media, but Chomp can surface that.
That is so interesting. Like, it would be really cool to see if privately versus publicly the difference in opinions.
Yeah, so the private belief is the first answer that we ask people to give, right? What you think. And the public belief is what you think other people are thinking. Because that's our perception, is our understanding of public belief. So we ask that as the second question, second answer. So like every question that we put out, we ask a user to give those 2 answers, what I think and what I think others think. So like if they will agree with me or disagree with me. And the results are pretty interesting. So like what you talked about, the green flag, red flag, people thought everyone else would say 50% or more red flag. But in reality, everyone secretly was thinking it's a green flag to say I love you within the first month of dating. And it was 93% green flag in private.
People really want that.
They really want that. But then if you like ask them on the street, you ask 100 people, it's very unlikely that 93 of them will openly say this, which is the fun thing about Chomp. And we hope this can get you to connect with others based on who they really are, what they really think, and create like the truly authentic or the truly honest like layer of like opinions on the internet.
Talk about how this was based on a paper that you found.
Yeah, so if you search surprisingly popular, that's the name of the paper. It was published on Nature in 2007. The 2 authors, they were, I think, postdoc at MIT at the time. Now, one of them is a professor at Wharton, which is not too far from me. I'm in South Jersey, so he's teaching at Penn. And then another one is still at MIT. So we have relationships and connections with both of them. And I believe we are the most well-known use case or the most used adaptation of their algorithm today. Because a lot of people try to do more research on top of the algorithm, but we're the only one that made like an application. And our last version of our app had 2 million responses from 50,000 users. And when they first put the algorithm out, it was a wisdom of the crowd algorithm. They believed with this like first answer, second answer methodology, which they called first order and second order belief. So first order is our thoughts, second order is like our perception of the world. They believe using this methodology, they can better understand the difference between perception and reality, and also be able to settle the result in a way that captures hidden opinions and like emergent opinions. So the classic question that they asked was, what is the capital of Illinois? Is it Springfield or Chicago? So what would be your answer, Reena?
Springfield.
Springfield. And what percentage of people who are answering do you think will agree with you?
I would hope 50% or higher.
You would hope, but what would you choose if that's the question that's in front of you?
I'll say 60%.
Okay. So there's people that would say Springfield and they would think others may or may not agree with them that it's Springfield. And there's people that would choose Chicago, right? And they would say people may or may not agree with them in that it's Chicago. So in the study that they did multiple times, what they saw was most people that chose Chicago thinks others will agree with them that it's Chicago. And most people who chose Springfield, different from you, they think others will probably think it's Chicago. They think there's a higher likelihood that others will not think it's Springfield like them, because they felt like maybe they think Americans just don't know their geography, like whatever reason it is. So then we saw this gap so there's more people who thinks everyone thinks it's Chicago than the amount of people who actually chose Chicago. So when we had that comparison in the study, they were able to compute the gaps and score it. So the algorithm would show that the minority belief is the actual belief, is Springfield. So it's the opposite of the majority belief. You can go into the Wikipedia and like look at it. So pretty much they look for these like perception reality gaps, and they look for people who hold hidden information or people who can identify the difference between their understanding and others' understanding. And the score is very much taking into account of those who goes against the grain and those who holds like a minority belief. So we saw this algorithm after we built our first prototype, because the first prototype that we built, I was just like ranting to my then co-founder about how I think people don't believe what they see on the internet. The internet is all fake. How do we get better information so they can trust information, trust each other? I was just like ranting. And then we designed this very Reddit-looking product. And then one of my kind of strength is user research. So we just like made a prototype, and then we did about 60 qualitative interviews. So like,
Did you host those?
Yes.
All of them?
Yeah. So every one of them is 1 to 2 hours. It's partially understanding their behavior of how they consume and contribute to information online. And it's partially getting their feedback to the prototype that we built. So we initially built the prototype around like crypto information, actually blockchain information, because that's my last startup. And we were like, people don't trust things on crypto. They're getting scammed all the time, right? So maybe we should build something around that. But what we heard was a lot of users just couldn't trust information online, like period. Like it's not just crypto. It's like they feel like they're getting like played when they look for like travel information, or like if they want to know what people really think about a product, they feel like they go on Reddit and look for human opinion, but it's like hard to decipher because there's like the Reddits is so long. So we saw that there's this like growing distrust against information on the internet, especially when it comes to human opinions. And I think now, 2 years after when we conducted this initial research, that's more true than ever, because now there's AI slop, right? 2 years ago, AI was not able to make like a human, it was called deep fake, right? Now it's just AI. Yeah, it used to be called deep fake, where you like see something on the internet and it's like Trump saying something, but it's not actually him, or something like that. But now there's a lot of AI created information or like videos and stuff like that. So people have this inherent distrust towards information.
Even my kids are constantly trying to guess like whether something's AI or not.
Yeah. So we did a lot of AI, not AI question for V1 of our product, and people loved it too. But what we learned is like humans are not very good at actually telling it apart. They still think something is AI when it isn't, or like the vice versa, the opposite as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, so people are not so good at it. Like as the more technology improves, I think it's actually harder for us to tell. But regardless, that's one thing. It's like not just AI, but like just in general information we see online, not just crypto, but everything, highly opinionated areas of information, people have trouble finding information that they trust. So that's one insight we got. The second insight was the Reddit-like format just wasn't going to work because it was too long. So we had this one user, like interviewee, who was like, yeah, I understand the premise and I would like this, but like, how can I play with this when I'm sitting on a toilet? Like when I'm taking a shit, how can I play with this? I don't want to be reading all of this like comments from people and like deciding what's right, what's not. And he's like, how can you make this a game that I can play when I'm sitting on the toilet? And at the time, it was this long form thing. So then, actually, my co founder at the time, he found this piece of research and then he was like, maybe we can turn this into a game. And then I drew some wireframes and I drew some ugly sketches and I sent it to our designer and was like, how can we turn this into kind of like a Cards Against Humanity, but like an actual like mobile app version of a game where people are making their choices about what they think others think. And that was the prototype. That was a new prototype. And then we won like a global hackathon and then we started raising some money and took off from there.
Yeah. Talk about how much you've raised.
Yeah, 3.6 million so far. It was through like a few different iterations. The first one I raised just to validate the idea. So we did less than 1 million and then an extension to that. So like a little bit over 1 million for the validation of the idea and to let people know that I'm now building my own startup. Because many of those first early investors are angels or like people who have worked with me before in some capacity. And then we did 2.5 million last year, about a year ago.
Congrats. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll be surprised how fast it goes. Yeah.
So what's the dream now?
Yeah. So the last few versions of the product, we initially went after a crypto audience and we realized a lot of people will be interested in this. We had like a record amount of like girlfriends being onboarded into crypto because of Chomp. There's this guy, his name's Matthew, he's based in Australia, and like him and his girlfriend would take road trips. And on the road trip, he would be like chomping these questions, right? Like the one we talked about, like green flag, red flag of saying I love you, or like, would you cheat on your partner for $100,000 if no one finds out? Just like questions like this. And he would just be reading it, and then his girlfriend Trithi will be like, "Oh, I wouldn't choose this, right? I think 80% of the people will think this. Like, can you change that?" And then he's like, "Well, this is my chomp. You should get your own chomp so we can compare how we choose differently." So she started.
That would be like a fun partner activity.
Yeah, because these are quite like we have new questions every day, right? These are scenarios that like you can talk about with your partner, and but you may not get the prompt to talk about it if we didn't give you that question. So there were multiple couples that started to chomp every day. So like Matthew that I talked about, from the first day that he found out about Chomp, he started to use it every day. And he crossed his 100-day streak. He was the earliest to get to his 100-day streak of that batch of users that found out about Chomp. And I did an interview with.
Did he get a plushie or?
I couldn't. Okay, I did not mail one. Maybe I should mail one to him. You're right.
Matthew gets a plushie.
But oh yeah, this is the plushie.
Cute.
Yeah, Chompy. Yeah, so we saw these phenomenon. We saw people wanting to connect not over crypto information, but just off like everyday cultural, morality, ethics stuff. So we were like, there's a much bigger audience for that outside of crypto. So we kind of shut the last version of the app down end of last year, and we've been trying to build this new version, which I don't know when this episode will come out, but hopefully it will finish App Store review and be out in the App Store very soon.
Exciting. Okay, I've got to ask you one more juicy question because you did admit to me that on the whatever show there was a question around open relationships. Can you talk a little bit about, like, first of all, I just want to say it's just insanely brave that you even went on there. And there is a mix of married women, non-married women, only fangirls, and he goes around, he asks like your body count, he asks how many partners you've had, and he wants to know like juicy things about your personal life. Like, how did you feel comfortable doing that? That was such a diversion from talking about being a creative entrepreneur and a tech founder.
Yeah, so the Whatever podcast was actually the first one I went on this year. I went on to challenge myself. Like I told you, I got pushed that video that of him asking women questions and making them, in my opinion, making them look real dumb. So I DM'd him. It was like, do you ever have any smart women on your show? Just as like an angry joke. And then he said, yeah, all the time. Do you want to come on? And then and I was like, okay. So then, yeah, he has a pre-show intake, which is like, what are some things that like juicy relationship stuff that you would like to talk about? So I share that period of my life after consulting my husband, like talking to my husband about it. We were open for about 2 years, I think. And some of that had to do with actually me wanting to understand my culture. So I had never dated anyone in Chinese until then, or have like spoken Chinese as a romance language, right? Like in dating and in conversation in that way. And then we were planning to leave Asia. So I talked to my husband and I said, I want to try to date in Chinese. Like I've never dated someone in Chinese. I've never used my language in that way. Like now I want to try it. Is that okay? And we happened to have been physically apart because second round of COVID, he was stuck in China. Sorry, he was stuck in the US and couldn't fly back to Shanghai where we were living at the time. And I was stuck in Singapore and couldn't fly back. And I was like, we're gonna be apart for many months, it seems like. So like, what do you think, right, about me like trying this? And he was like, okay. So then I did. I went on many dates and I wanted to date in Chinese because I'd never done it before. So like I tried to like go on dates with people that spoke Chinese and like see how that's like. I did end up like spending quite a few months with one person, and it was a very memorable experience. And it actually, because it's such a new thing, it opened up a lot of conversations between me and my husband. Like we had never thought about what would it mean to be in that arrangement if we have children, right? Or if we move, or like, what does it mean to love someone? And what does it mean to be involved with someone else while you're completely open but still committed to your husband and your other? I didn't talk about all this on the Whatever podcast, by the way. Like on the Whatever podcast, he kind of took it into like a route of cheating and like he wanted to rage bait me. But it wasn't cheating because I wasn't doing it without the consent or awareness of my husband. I did feel uncomfortable by the direction he was taking it. He was like rallying up the other women actually on the table.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did they feel about it?
It went into a direction about how vaginas are not self-cleansing.
No way. Okay. Yeah, that's totally crazy.
Yeah, he kind of took it this like really weird way. He was like, "Oh, it's worse if it's worse if a woman is cheating because you cannot wash out your vag. But it's okay if a man is cheating because I can just take a shower and it's clean." He's like, he kind of took it this like really crude and grotesque and like irrelevant direction, and people's comments became about that. And I think it was more like an audience surveying thing, right? Like he wanted to create this like obviously antagonistic environment for the audience and for people to respond to. And my panel, the day that I was on the Whatever podcast, it was 6 out of 10 OnlyFans creators. But what was interesting was that many of them want to get married.
I noticed that. And they even said that they would give up what they were doing for that if they, had to. I feel like they were kind of in some ways like impressed by you, like looking up to you, like wanting to know about your experience.
From you watching it, that's how you felt?
They were like, we want to get married. Yeah. Like they were saying that. They were like, what's that like?
Yeah. I mean, but next to me, there was a girl who was married, and she's an African American girl. And her whole thing is she thinks women shouldn't vote.
Oh, I didn't get that far. Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So there was another person.
I wonder if she really feels that way though.
That's her whole TikTok and Instagram platform, actually. So she is a Republican, and she had like an incident that happened around her that has to do with like transgender rights that like, impacted her. But somehow that one thing led to another, and she became this like stay-at-home wife who felt like women shouldn't vote and should just like agree with whoever their husband's voting for. And I was like, oh, okay. It's interesting stuff, interesting people that go on this podcast. But one of the OnlyFans girls, I think you or your listeners might find this to be fun. So she's very beautiful and she's doing OnlyFans, and she has gone on the show multiple times. And every time Brian, the host, makes fun of her, and she sometimes gets a little bit sad, right? And slightly offended. I can't tell if it's acting. But then at the end of that episode, because it's a 10-hour long session, outside, I was standing outside talking to another girl, and she was like taking a cab and going back to LA because it's recording in Santa Barbara. So I asked her, I was like, this is like your fourth time coming on the show. Like, why do you keep coming on? Do you feel uncomfortable, right, by the way he's treating you? And she said, the first time I went on the show, the next month, my OnlyFans monthly income went from $50,000 to $200,000. She's like, I think like the people who watch the show, like they're regulars, right? They come and go on my account. So she's like, that's why I come back. Like every time I come, I see a spike in my monthly revenue. So that's why I do it. So it makes it makes one wonder how much of her behavior on the show is also performative. Like, can she really not answer those questions? Does she really not know the capital of Japan? Or is she just like making herself to look a certain way, like to fit into a certain archetype, so that the people who are watching will go and pay for her OnlyFans subscription?
Yeah, I recently even asked in my Facebook group too, it was like, how many people are lying or just clickbaiting with certain comments or questions, like all the time. And how is that even measurable? I don't know. I feel like there's so many people that are getting political these days, and do they even really hold those beliefs? And do their beliefs change, or are they influenced by their algorithm?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty tough task to quantify subjectivity, quantify opinion. And I believe there are many ways to do it. So like for me, for our product, we're scoring like three things. We're scoring, do you know something others don't? So that's like based on the two options that we ask, like perception, what you think and what you think others think, and we measure that on aggregate. So the first thing we measure is, do you know something others don't? And the second thing we measure is, do you know that you know something others don't? Because like some people just think this way, right? But some people it's like, I know that I think differently from other people, but I can also very accurately know the difference, right? Like others think A, but I still believe it's B, knowing that most others will think A. So that's the second thing we measure. And the third thing we measure is like, how calibrated are you? Like how much you spend time thinking about your answers? Like how true are you in standing by this answer? So we measure those three things based on how they respond, and we try to score that. And in the future, it's possible that we will start to give them certain type of like points or rewards based on how we score it. And I think it will be really interesting if through this, we can surface a lot of minority experts that are like really good at understanding relationships, or like really good at understanding like social dynamics in, I don't know, like in the Midwest, or like really good at kind of telling if political commentators are being honest or not, or something like that. So like we can score and quantify and use the way Chomp is scoring to become like a standard of how to measure opinions.
What about people who study like facial expressions or nonverbal cues? That might be interesting in like including some of them.
I think that will be really interesting. Right now, we're primarily text-based, but one direction we can take Chomp is like watch a clip, right? Watch this clip and say what you think about this and that.
That would make good social media.
Yeah, that will make it, I think what makes something social media can be text as well, right? And like if we dissect social, it's just people can emoji react, or they can comment, or they can share it. And then media is like there is some kind of content. So if we think about the very loose sense of the word social media, Chomp is social media, but it's trying to do something different from today's social media. And I will much rather focus on making the content itself something that is worth being social about. Like, see this question, like you, like you heard this question that we've asked on Chomp, and then you ask your own audience. So that behavior is a social behavior through a piece of media that we presented. But the platform, like, not all of this happened on Chomp, but I think that's okay. As long as we can make the content something that invites discussion and changes people's minds and gets them to talk about it with their friends, I see that as like a win for Chomp.
You should make like a Chomp game where you come up with like Chomp kinds of questions that people can do with like their spouse or their communities.
Well, that's the actual Chomp, which we're gonna push out, right? So once it's out, I'll have you test it with your husband and see.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Also, like, how can other people become users of yours and connect with you?
Yeah, right now, if they go on chomp.fyi, so chomp.fyi, we have like a wait list situation. So we will let you guys know. And like, if you sign up early, we'll get you some codes for you to try it out for free. But the app itself, because we do want to filter for people who are not like spamming the network, we do have like a small subscription cost to it. But we will end up having features like after you answer for a whole week, we will give you some insights about who you are in comparison with others. So this could be like, Reena, you always see the best in people, right? People are consistently choosing like red flag, but you're always choosing green flag. Like you seem to be like more optimistic about humanity than others. Like that could be an insight that we give you. But all of our analyses and our insight, they're private to you. We're not going to share anyone's personal information with others. And we will always make sure that our analysis kind of puts you in relations to the world and sees like either how special or unique you are, or like how you belong in places that you didn't think you belonged to before.
I love that. Just one final question. Like, have your parents experimented with Chomp? What do they think of you in the startup scene?
My dad's English isn't the best, but he understands the premise. He understands the premise. And whenever I go back to Shenzhen and I talk to him, I actually do talk to him about like what's happening at Chomp at my business. And he will like give me suggestions. And my mom understands it as well. Yeah. So my mom is really proud of me. I wouldn't say she like completely she's not able to give like a 30-second elevator's pitch about Chomp, but she like understands what it is. And actually I'm excited to meet, she's engaged with her. Yeah, she's engaged with her.
Wow. Yeah, you got to tell the quick little mommy story that you shared with me. That is so crazy how your mom is like reinventing herself right now.
Yeah, I can talk about it real quick. So I actually do think some of it I feel a little bit guilty because I was away since I was 12, right? So then my parents didn't have a shared conversation topic, right? I didn't have a kid to nurture and to like care for like such a long time. And I think it may have led to, I don't know, them leading different lives, maybe. But anyways, so they kind of started to drift away, grow apart, and they got divorced actually 3 weeks after me and my husband's wedding. Yeah. My mom was worried about what my husband's family would think of me if I came from like a divorced family.
They're like, let's keep it together till after they tie the knot.
Yeah, she kind of like kept it together, and then like after we like traveled for a bit, we went back home. My mom like flew in and was like, "I'm thinking about getting a divorce." I was like, "Okay, whatever makes you happy." So then she did, and then
Did you see that coming?
no, no. I felt like they were unhappy, right? But I didn't think they would divorce, or I didn't really know because I felt like they were unhappy for a while. And they weren't getting divorced earlier. So I didn't anticipate this to happen so soon after my marriage.
You're like, my wedding didn't motivate a change? No.
They were visibly, in my opinion, not a good fit and unhappy for a while. But the timing of my mom making that decision was pretty sudden to me. And then they divorced, and then my mom ended up kind of like taking a pretty long hiatus from like work and from everything. And then she decided to teach English in a rural village in China. So it's one of those places where there's no airport. You have to take a train and then take a car and then drive up a mountain, right? And then she's like teaching in this like rural place in Guizhou. It's like a little mountain with 150 families in this village. So she went to teach English for kids in first through third grade. So she did this for 3 years in a row. She kind of like rented like a local home and like brought her plants and like ended up living there. And there's no internet in this village. So it was one of those places where like if you want to eat a fish, you will like reach your hand into the rice fields because it's water and like catch a fish and like cook it. And like they would go into the mountains and get like a beehive and like eat the bees. It's like very, very like country, like rural China. So she did that for 3 years. And then one day she was like, Kiko, I want to study abroad. I like wanted to study abroad when you were little, but we didn't have enough money, right? So like we sent you and like I'm teaching English, but I've not even spoken English in an English speaking environment. So I'm gonna go do that. And I was like, okay. So then August of 2024, I took her to freshman orientation or like to orientation for her master's in New Jersey. And I think I was telling you that like I feel like I'm her mom, right? And that
I was getting ready to say you're totally like her parent.
yeah, and like she's only had one boyfriend before that, right? Is my dad. So like this is like she's like dating and like she's going through all these like range of emotions like a high school girl would go through, right? And like her breaking up her first with her first boyfriend who was in English. I helped her write the letter to break up and yeah, it's super interesting to go through that with your mom. And then she met David, who I think truly understands her, accommodates her, and I see her becoming like a better parent to me or like a better or friend, someone who is accommodating, empathetic, and like able to change her perception of things now that she's met.
That's so remarkable. Like she's really evolving. How cool is that?
Yeah, and this past summer, they just this summer, they just came back from visiting China. So like David went with her to go to my hometown for the first time, met my grandma and met my aunts, and they're getting married.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I have not met his kids, but he has kids, and I think I'm really curious. I think they're curious about me, right? I'm like excited to meet them and get to know them because they're family now.
To be continued. Wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, I'm so proud of my mom. I think that was I'm glad that you reminded me because like that's the one thing that I wanted to say. Like here is like I'm super proud of you, mom, for have like gone through these chapters and most people in their 60s would stop reinventing themselves, right? Or they would try in very small scale. And like my mother packed her life up and like went to a different country and is open to love again and is like learning these new things and she's finishing up her doctorate in literature. She's gonna be the most educated person in our family. And yeah, I'm very, very proud of her. She will always be like a role model, like in times of challenge. I always remember that someone in my family is that resilient, is that optimistic.
I absolutely love that. I cannot wait to hear what my dad has to say about this. Kiko, thank you so much for being so open and such a great storyteller. And I would be happy to be one of your users. And I would love to have you on just and continue to follow your path.
You've heard from my mom. Now, let's switch it over to Grandpa.
All right.
All right, this
So
is a very moving story for me, Kiko. It's again two different races that have made you, and it really makes you think that when we're young, two people can get together and not necessarily have anything in common, just some chemistry on a date. Who knows, an interaction from a party, and it leads into something where not all the fundamentals of life are even looked at. And yet a person can be born out of just an interaction. And the two people down the road can work on it and work on it and work on it. And they're so different and from different cultures and different philosophies and religions, that there isn't necessarily ever going to be a real meeting of the minds, where it could be, even though you try, it's very possible to fail. I'm talking about your parents. And then of course, when you're very different, the child or the young lady has also a lot of adversities to overcome, because there's no necessarily a strong family connection from either parent. And then you said something very interesting to me, that your mom, who finally divorces your father, finds out that if she continues to educate herself and pivot and keep learning and adjusting to life experiences, that is still a key to get out of any rut. And isn't that really the truth? That it's never hopeless if you keep trying and keep trying to build your values and your skills. So then you get back to the dating process, that you have all these apps now these days. And what do these apps really represent? They're trying to find people that can connect with the right philosophy and politics. They want to know whether they can connect on whatever subject matters that they're interested in and hobbies. And yet, if you're drinking on the job, none of those things matter, okay? You could just be out on an evening and something can happen, and none of these things are taken into account. What country you're from, what your religion is. There's just an attraction, a chemistry at the moment, and shebang. And there you can be, right? And yet, in order to really have something work, you have to be where the person has to be respectful. They have to be kind. They have to be nice. They have to be willing to partner with you if you really want to have a successful relationship. So all of these things should be looked at before you get together with someone, before you marry someone. And yet, a lot of times, especially when we're young, we think we have all the answers before we start. And we don't really check off all the boxes to make sure it's really a fit. And people from all different walks of life can get together, but it's a harder road. And you've emphasized that as well. But the answer is that you're a beautiful girl with also where you've educated yourself, have overcome a lot of adversities, and you do it with such a positive attitude that there is hope for the rest of us.
I like that. What did you think of her going to a boarding school in another country at a young age?
That's the thing. The idea is that at least she was learning, but to make friends and to be put in an environment like that, it's very challenging. So
And
the
she was
funny
so
part,
young, and she was
right?
there
So
for a long time.
exactly. So the thing is that parents set their children up by their own actions and can make things very, very difficult for their children. And
And
children,
sometimes we think we're doing the best we can, and we don't really know what we're doing.
and we really don't know what we're doing, is right. But the answer is that there's still hope that we can pivot by developing and learning and improving our skills and our understanding. And that's why it's better to call the Better Call Daddy show, because we add a few cents of wisdom that we get from these beautiful shows that Reena Joy runs, because we get a little bit smarter with every beautiful episode that we do.
Dad, you are
Good.
so good at throwing that in to the end of every episode. Thank you for that.
It's really two thumbs up for Kiko, that she was able to be open and revealing, and also she showed a good sense of morality even through all of this stuff, because she also learned that about open relationships and about where chemistry should just take over. And she says, no, morality, doing the right thing, being kind, being considerate, being loyal, all of these factors is what builds a relationship. And she wants the real deal.